Start with a question, and I want to give you guys first the chance to have a discussion. What do you guys think dignity looks like? When you think of the word dignity, what is the image that's drawn in your head? I want to give you guys the floor for a few minutes to think about it and to maybe give us a few answers. When someone says, have some dignity, or we are a dignified people, or well, alhamdulillah, we are a people of dignity, or we are a religion of dignity, what does that mean? Yes, brother. So that people respect you, you have self-respect, respect for others. Excellent. Very good answer. Yes, sister. Alaikum salam. Excellent answer. Jazakallah khair. Barakallah feekum. Jazakallah khair. Sister, we would let you give the halaqah if we knew that we knew the definition beforehand, but but unfortunately they asked me first, so inshallah next time they'll come to you. So it's exactly like you said, and I like that the sister also maybe perhaps limited it to her life as a woman, and that me as a woman, that I have this. But alhamdulillah, your definition and what you said is actually the general definition as well. Can anyone give us examples, like a scenario of what dignity looks like? Not just a word for word definition, but perhaps a scenario where you think this is a dignified individual, or this is a situation where this is what dignity means to me. And you talk about, can you think of a scenario where someone is dignified, or what you consider dignity is? Yes, brother. Except to die on your land and not leave it. And we have the people of Gaza setting the precedent for that. May Allah give them and grant them liberation, and allow us to pray in an Aqsa free from all filth and all Zionists. Say Ameen. Anyone else? Excellent example, brother. Any Palestine examples, you get extra brownie points. Any other? I want to give chances to other people. Barakallahu feekum. Anyone else? Yes, Amr. Don't allow people to talk about your religion while in your presence. That means you're a dignified individual. You're demanding respect. Jazakallah khair. You guys all hit the target and hit around it and hit right on it, command. But we want to set an exact definition for what dignity is. And in order to do this, we have to translate the word dignity to the Arabic word, because English is a garbage language. English, everything has a million definitions, and everything can be used in different ways, as opposed to the Arabic language and other languages as well. You have, have the Urdu language, Indian, Pashto. All these different languages have these exact terms that mean something so exact that the English language doesn't have. So when you translate the English to Arabic, dignity becomes the Arabic word for what? Who knows? Al-Izzah? Incorrect. I knew someone was going to do that. Al-Izzah is glory. Completely different. من كان يريد العزة فلله العزة جميعا. Whoever wants glory, needs glory, know that Allah has all the glory. So what is the English, the Arabic word here? Who can tell us? Karama. Excellent. Karama. So karama in the Arabic language means احترام المرء لذاته، وهو شعور بالشرف والقيمة الشخصية يجعله يتأثر ويتألم إذا ما انتقد قدره. Exactly like the sister said, self-respect is a feeling, karama is a feeling of self-respect and a feeling of honor and personal value that makes a person feel affected and hurt if their worth is diminished. You know your exact value, and when that value is diminished, whether in a public sphere, in a private sphere, in any of your relationships, your parents, subhanAllah, if someone talks down upon you, any person, that self-worth is diminished. And that person is affected. Why? Because they understand the self-respect that they require. So imagine the deen of Islam, the perfect deen, and the deen that is created to be the religion left for the people till the day of judgment. When that deen is disrespected constantly, when the people of that deen are constantly portrayed in Hollywood as people who are in seconds, in a few minutes, might blow up at any time, in a few minutes might become violent, in a few minutes they get a rabies like subhanallah reaction, and they might bite you and turn into subhanallah. Always Islam is portrayed negatively in Hollywood. As a matter of fact, I took a class in college called Muslim Diaspora, and one of the things that we studied in the class was how Muslims are portrayed in movies. And 90% of the time a Muslim is shown in a Hollywood movie, they are portrayed as some sort of terrorist, as a violent individual, as someone who means harm, not someone who means good. So automatically, this society, in the American society, derives most of its thaqafa, most of its understanding of the world and perspective on the world from movies. That's where they derive their perception. They watch their movies like it's documentaries. So if you watch Harry Potter, that's a documentary to the average American. It truly is. That's how they think of the world, and that's how they perceive the world. Now, what do we Muslims perceive of ourselves? Umar radiallahu anhu says, and obviously this was going to be the one quote that we turn to when we talk about karama and dignity, and he says, نحن قوم أعزنا الله بالإسلام فمهما ابتغينا العزة في غيره أذلنا الله. We are a people glorified by Islam. So if we were to turn to any other ism, any other ideology, any other theology, Allah will bring us down. The moment you move away from Islam, the moment you turn away from Islam, the moment you give your back to it, the moment you decide that I don't need the morals and I don't need the ethical guidance that Islam provides, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will surely allow you to fail. And we're going to see later on how this impacted the Muslim world on not just a international political level, but also just the interactions between us as individuals. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says in the Quran, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the Quran, 604 pages. A book that's left for all of mankind till the end of time, a book that's not going to be changed, because Allah is the one who's going to preserve it. So there's a limited message in that Quran. A limited message. You have a certain amount of verses to give all of mankind, all of humanity, the guidance that it needs till the day of judgment. So every verse, every ayah, every surah, every part of the Quran is organized in a way where it's left and it's perfectly gathered in order for people to be able to understand their deen and in order for people to find the truth. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts an entire ayah in the Quran talking about this idea of dignity, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ وَحَمَلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ وَرَزَقْنَاهُمْ مِنَ الطَّيِّبَاتِ وَفَضَّلْنَاهُمْ عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِمَّنْ خَلَقْنَا تَفْضِيلًا. And we have certainly honored the children of Adam and carried them on the land and sea and provided for them of the good things and preferred them over much of that we have created. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the scholars of the Quran, they say that one of the functions of the Quran is what? Dignify the human being. Takreem bani Adam. One of the functions of the Quran, if you take ulum al-Quran academically, this will be one of the things that you study. That the Quran has functions. There are certain functions that the Quran gives an individual, certain freedoms and liberties that the Quran gives the individual. So one of those functions of the Quran is that takreem bani Adam. How? There's so many sub-aspects that explain this takreem of bani Adam. That the Quran gives the right to resistance. The Quran gives the right to self-defense. The Quran gives the right to freedom of religion, freedom of theology. Freedom of theology, even if someone is going to be misguided and be a kafir, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the right of the person to be misguided. What's the surah that proves this? Everyone knows the surah. Surah Al-Kafirun. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ. Say you, oh who you disbelieve. لَا أَعْبُدُ مَا تَعْبُدُونَ. I do not worship that which you worship. وَلَا أَنْتُمْ عَابِدُونَ مَا أَعْبُدُ. And you don't worship what I worship. وَلَا أَنَا عَابِدٌ مَا عَبَدْتُمْ. And guess what? I'm not going to worship what you worship. وَلَا أَنْتُمْ عَابِدُونَ مَا أَعْبُدُ. And you are not going to worship what I worship. لَكُمْ دِينُكُمْ وَلِيَ دِينِ. I have my religion, you have yours. Allah is telling you that this son of Adam, you are not to take him and grab him by the neck and tell him, listen here, you little kafir, come with me to the masjid. That's not how it works. Because in another ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا إكراها في الدين. There is no compulsion in religion. So there's no aspect of the religion where you're forcing someone to do something. And this applies to salah, this applies to hijab, this applies to dressing modestly, this applies to acting justly towards others. You cannot force an individual to do any of the above actions if they intrinsically do not believe in the message that you're delivering. And this is takreem, this is karama. Because people, one of the biggest struggles, and the struggles that will remain till the end of time, is that people struggle over what for liberties and freedoms they're allowed versus what they're not allowed. My freedom and liberty to own this device. And the government tells you, no, we need to hear what you're saying. We need to know what you're talking about. We need to know what you're searching. And that's the constant struggle. I need these liberties. I need these freedoms. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you, no, certain liberties you can't have. You have to pray 5 times a day. There's no such thing as going the whole day without praying. If you're a man, you have to come to the masjid to pray. There's no such thing as going the whole day without entering the masjid once. Right? Some madhahib make it a fard for you to come pray, if you're capable, of course, if you are not at work or not busy, any of these things, that you have to come to the masjid to pray. Some scholars, that's the meaning that they derive. For the men, of course. For the sisters, you get the full reward, mashallah, even if you pray at home. Or if you pray at home. So the Quran is constantly trying to raise the status of son of Adam, is constantly protecting the rights of the son of Adam, is constantly drawing for you limitations. For things that, telling you what you can do and what you cannot do. And telling you that there's dignity in doing or acting a specific way and not doing a specific thing. And I want to get into, before I get into what that means, I want to ask you a question. In Islam, we have something called the Sharia. If you ask a Republican or a Southerner or a cowboy what the Sharia, a redneck, what the Sharia is, they'll tell you Sharia law. That's what the Muslims want to spread, in order to spread violence and injustice all over the world so they could take over the world. Sharia law, right? Very easy. There's a video of this guy. He hears that Muslims invented algebra. He's like, wait, so we're studying Sharia math? So he gets really upset. All right, so the Sharia, which is the legislative aspect of our deen, comes with very specific functions. Who knows what are the functions of the Sharia? Maqasidu Sharia. What are the functions of the Sharia? Who can tell us? If you got stopped by some redneck on the R train or in the A train or on the ferry, if you're a Staten Island resident, right? And they ask you, what does Sharia talk about? What is it? What are you going to say? What are the maqasid of Sharia? I see a hand. Yes, sister. One of them may be to protect the rights of the people. I need a definite answer. I want to see a confident Muslim here. A dignified, confident Muslimah talking about her deen. Jazakumullah khair. Look, there are 5 or 6 functions of the Sharia. So we can list them one by one. What do you guys think is the first thing that the Sharia comes to preserve? Well, I'm helping you guys out here. Huh? Tawheed. So if the Sharia comes to preserve Tawheed, this is called Hifdhud Deen, the preservation of the deen. The first or one, there's ikhtilaf amongst the fuqaha or the usuliyun here about what comes first, Hifdhud Deen or Hifdhul Haya. One of the first thing the Sharia, and most scholars say Hifdhul Haya comes first, or Hifdhul Nafs, the first thing the Sharia comes to preserve is yourself, your ruh. Allah commands you not to commit suicide. Allah commands you not to kill the innocent soul. Allah commands you when you are even on a battlefield, there is a limit to where your weapon, the tip of your weapon reaches, or the nozzle of your gun reaches. There's a limit to where your battle is directed. It's not this total warfare policy that we have post World War II that the enlightened Europeans and the enlightened American philosophers came up with. The deen tells you there's a limit. حفظ الحياة. The first thing the Sharia comes to preserve is life. And subhanAllah, the same ignorant individuals that attack the Sharia don't know that what they're attacking, the first thing it comes to preserve is what? Life. حفظ الحياة. The second thing that it comes to preserve is the deen. And this is where the scholars disagree. Some say the first thing is the deen and then your life. Some say it's the life and then the deen. But for example, when it comes to a situation where, and this is by the way where you start to see, because this is usul, so this is where you start seeing the differences in fiqh and how the fuqaha reach their decision. For example, when COVID struck, right? When some guy ate a bat in China, right? So when COVID struck, all of a sudden the whole world was quarantined. We could not pray Jum'ah, even though as a Muslim man, it is a faridah for you to pray Jum'ah every single Friday. What comes first? Self-preservation of myself and my family from this virus. Maybe I have a parent who's old and comorbid at home. Comorbid means I have multiple diseases or multiple big issues in terms of health. So I have an elderly parent, someone who's easily impacted by this virus. So do I go to Jum'ah or not? All of us shut down the masajid. All the masajid shut down, and Jum'ah became pray dhuhr at home. What does that tell you? In order to preserve the life, in order to preserve the nafs, what happened to the deen? We had to, switch a part of our deen. No more Jum'ah. You pray what? Dhuhr. So in this case, what comes first, life or the deen? Life. Because how can you practice the deen? How can you empower the deen if there's no life in the first place? If you're dying, right? How can you lift this deen if you're dying in the first place? If you don't exist, it's not possible. So this is about where you start to see the differences. And not to go, by the way, this is like a semester-long topic. Very, very interesting, beautiful topic. We should all obviously know, and there's a series online, I could definitely help you guys out with that, about the Sharia and what it is and what it does and what its goals and what the aims are. But it's important for us just to know these for now. حفظ الدين, حفظ النفس. The third is حفظ العقل, to preserve one's mind. Put limitations on things that would impact your mind. Social media. One of the biggest killers of teenage girls is social media. The amount of suicide that it leads to because they see a specific idea of what a woman is supposed to be or what a woman is supposed to look like. This is the highest killer of teenage girls, believe it or not. So social media that everyone has and it's so easily accessed by everybody, subhanAllah, is one of the killers. And it does not preserve your mind. And there needs to be limitations to it. Some kids have Instagrams and Twitter and TikTok and whatnot. All these things at the age of 12, 13, 11. What are you doing with these things? What are we teaching our kids? What are we giving them access to? All right? حفظ النسل, preservation of lineage. That when you hear Marwan, you know that Marwan bin Tariq bin Zin bin Zaki you know his lineage. You know who his family members are. Not that, subhanAllah, you completely destroy the social structure because you have, wal-'iyadhu billah, people who have children outside of wedlock, and then the father decides to leave, and you don't know who the father is. Or the mother decides to leave, the kid will never be with his mother. He'll always lose that kindness and the compassion of the mother. And you need both your father and your mother equally in order to have an individual who's balanced, who's just, who's calm. A person needs both parents. You need, subhanAllah, these two figures specifically, a father and a mother. Not, wal-'iyadhu billah, two fathers, not two mothers, none of that stuff. Specifically, a dad and a mom. In order for a person to be sawi, to be balanced, in order for your aql to be preserved, and then your nafs, and then your deen. So you see that all of these are interconnected. I don't want to go further into the functions of the Sharia, but this is another way that Allah gives us the Sharia, the application of the Sharia. You already see the impacts of that and the dignification of the Sharia gives the individual by following it. So if I move to anything other than Islam, if I move to any ideology besides Islam, all of a sudden I'm causing injustice, I'm causing dhulm, I'm causing oppression. And you can see this, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the sins that Allah preserves us from. What are some sins that Allah tells us not to engage in? Or things that to stay away from? Yes, brother. For example, zina, fornication, right? Fornication, what it does, and there's a wisdom to every single sin and why not to do it. And if you look these things up online, the wisdom behind not sinning in the first place, you're going to see that every sin has a very specific impact on your life, and that every sin, there's a wisdom to staying away from it. And I'm glad someone mentioned zina, because the first thing that zina does is that zina deprives your life from barakah. You don't get barakah. There's no barakah in rizq. There's no barakah in wealth. There's no barakah even in the pleasure that you're getting from this action, as opposed to engaging in that which is halal and getting the barakah from that. The second thing that zina does is that what did we talk about? The Sharia preserving lineage. What does zina open the door to? The debilitation of that lineage. The person, subhanAllah, being born, not knowing who his parents are, the parents having a child, and them deciding they don't want to be together anymore. And so the idea of parenting is thrown completely out the window. So the fact that you might have a balanced individual goes out the door. And it becomes this icy road that you might walk on. And perhaps a kid might become balanced, perhaps not. Perhaps you get both parents, perhaps not. Zina leads to the breaking down of the social structure completely. And the social structure of Islam, the cornerstone of that social structure is family. Everything in Islam that you see is to preserve that family, that nuclear family, a father, a mother, a child. Islam aims to preserve that over everything. Because the whole point of a family is that two individuals come together in the halal. And then they have a child. And they come together with other families naturally. Those families create a neighborhood. That neighborhood, they create a city. Those cities come together to create what? Let's say states or countries. Those nations come together to create what? Civilizations. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. There's no coincidence that when Allah talks about وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا, and we made you clans and tribes. People use this like it's a marriage ayah only for when there's an interracial marriage. That's not only what it's for. Allah is talking about not just bringing these two people together, bringing families and entire civilizations together through mixing the clans, through mixing different nations together. And what did he say? وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ. Why does dignity come up here? What brought dignity into this? إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. The more taqwa you have, the more you follow the deen, the more تتثبت على الدين, the more Allah raises your status, the more you have a healthy life with a healthy wife and a healthy children. Every aspect of your life falls together. Even if there are hardships, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts the things to ease your life along the way. All of this comes from karama. All this comes from following the deen. But if you're going to follow an ism, if you're going to take feminism as your top number one, khalas. Everything becomes 50-50, which is so unjust, as opposed to a system that tells you the man is the one that alayhi nafaqah, the man is the one to pay for everything, but the woman, what's the function and the role of the woman in that family is to literally build the civilization. When we talk about raising children, for example, what a corporate America wants you is as a woman to work and slave away for 8 to 12 hours a day for the sake of getting money, getting that tax return at the end of the year, getting the W2s, telling you that you're a girl boss, and wow, you're amazing. As opposed to actually influencing another human being. Do you understand the amount of power a mother has? If my mom calls me right now, what do I have to do? I have to answer the phone. You know what? That's power. That's power right there. You want to talk about power? That's power. You have the power to influence an entire set of humans with ideologies, with fikr, that is an insane amount of power. But you think the power comes from working and slaving away for corporate America? That's where the power comes from? No. That's the biggest lie ever. Biggest lie ever told. and then to live till 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 by yourself. As opposed to, subhanAllah, when you said, well, every time I see my grandma, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elongate her life and give her health and barakah, and anyone here who has their grandparents alive. When you sit down and you see all the people that came from this woman, she had 5 children, every one of those children got married, had kids, and you see like 30 cousins, all of them, she's sitting there happy, giggling, laughing, playing with all of them. And all of us are influenced by the and loved, and we love her back, that one grandma. May Allah bless her. Isn't that more power than whatever feminism promises you and whatever feminism tells you? Because this is what Allah tells you is the natural order and the natural system and natural way of doing things. And people are going to think, yeah, I'm coming at the sisters, anything. I'm not. All I'm doing is very factually, in a very factual fashion, and perhaps people get upset when a man talks about this, but every other man who's not Muslim can talk about the affairs of Muslim women and how come Muslim women wear hijab and how come women wear niqab. But when a Muslim man decides to talk about, here's what our deen tells us about what is right, everyone's like, yo, you're a misogynist, bro. What are you doing? Wallahi, that's not the goal. Obviously, the sisters they know their affairs better. But that doesn't mean that if Allah gives me the opportunity to talk about these things, that I don't talk about them in a just, fair manner. And if I don't address them in a just, fair manner, feel free to criticize me. Take a tomato, take an egg, do whatever. Chuck it at the table, no problem. So that's one. We just talked about one sin and the impact of that one sin. What did we talk about? Zina. And look to the whole tangent that we took because of that one sin and the lack of wisdom that one sin does. And by the way, when you learn the impacts of those sins and what barakah they take from your life, you want to avoid them. That's the wisdom of learning about these sins. You want to stay away from them. You don't want to fall into zina. You don't want to fall into alcohol. Alcohol kills 10,000 Americans every single year. Every single year, 10,000 people needlessly die from alcohol. Not because they consume the alcohol, but because the person who consumes the alcohol decides, yo, I need to get home. I had a good time. Great. Can I drive now? Yes, I can. Goes and kills an entire family. SubhanAllah, that one sin, that small drink, that few sips, those few bottles, kill or keep a human. You know how insane that is? And Allah says, stay away from it, and people still engage in it. Another sin, embezzling money, taking money, the wealthy hoarding an unfair amount of money. All right? All these people that hoard this amount of money, look at the United States right now. What is the median salary in the United States? Who can tell me? 55? That's cool, that's nice. 75. That's median. No. Trust me. I did the research. You're the finance dude. I'll give it to you. But I just did research before you. The median salary in the US is 75, from what I know. If you take if you list every single American who's working. If you take the top 1,000 earners out of the equation, who knows what the median becomes? 35. So that means the top 1,000 Americans, the top 1,000 wealthiest Americans, make more money enough to impact a statistic in this fashion. That's insane. Insane economic inequality. One of the things that the Sharia comes to preserve, hifdhul mal, to preserve wealth. But why not? Let's go follow capitalism. Why? Everyone hoard all the toilet paper. Hoard everything that you can. Hoard. That's the ideology. Hoard as much as you can. Buy whatever you can. You wore the dress once, throw it away. Wear a new dress. You can't be seen without the same dress twice. You wore the hat once, you wore the kufiya once, throw it out. Get another one. You wore the jacket once, you got the pick for the gram. Great, get another one. You can't be seen with the same outfit twice. Even though Umar ibn Khattab, his entire khilafah, and he's the leader of the world, leader of nations, he had 2 garments. He had 2 garments. And one would, when one, subhanAllah, would get cut or get any cuts in it, he would sew it with the fabric from the other one. And every year, that was his salary. Every year, he would get a few dinars and two new thawbs. That's it. That was his salary. Because he's the Khalifa of the Muslims. Yeah, let's talk about the economic inequality. Look at who's our president, right? Crazy. It's crazy. Everything that you turn away from Islam from, all of a sudden leads to the complete destruction of society. Every time a human is like, wait, guys, I think I figured it out with my brain. I, I got it, trust me. And decides to take the lead on things without first consulting our divine message, consulting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His own malakut, in His own creation, the entirety of society falls apart. The final thing that we want to talk about when it comes to karama, when it comes to dignity, is after we talked about the preservation of life, the preservation of the deen, the preservation of the mind, the preservation of the lineage, preservation of wealth, money. We talked about the sins that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps us away from. That we just a small sample. We talked about economic disparities, right? We talked about alcohol, zina. Every single sin that Allah stops you from, there's a wisdom behind it. It's not stopping you for no reason. There's a wisdom behind it. And by the way, every outlet that Allah has made haram, it's only one small outlet and everything else is halal. Alcohol is haram. Every other drink in the world, what is it? Halal. Every other drink, Celsius, Monster, مش عارف, what do people drink? Tropical, whatever. All the flavors of all the juices. Water, that's a good option, guys. Drink water, right? We're sponsored by water. So, drinking water, sorry, I'm going to change about drinking water. Every other drink is halal. Allah said, don't eat pork. That's the only meat you can't eat. Every other drink, fish, meat, lamb, goat, go off, brother. Go get whatever you want. We'll get you 2 goats right now. Show us your skills, right? So like, Allah made this deen so easy. Yet because of the society we live in and how much it pressures you, how much it makes you feel like the other, you're like, whoa, I'm missing out. I'm not drinking alcohol. I'm missing out. Really? Maybe I should try it. Maybe I shouldn't. Right? That becomes the hadith and nafs. Bacon, egg, and cheese. Now that's like the one sandwich you're missing out on. Allah made every other sandwich halal. You have turkey bacon. You have every other types of, bacon. Sure, it's not actually bacon. Bacon is pork. But you have other meats that you can put on the egg and cheese. But that's the one. Without that meat, brother, I'm gonna go like khalas, I'm losing my deen. Obviously, we're doing this in with a bit of satire and a bit of jest. But to bring it more to a more serious topic. When we keep moving away from our deen, and one person decides to move away from his deen, and his neighbor decides to move away from his deen, and then the whole city decides to move away from the deen, and then the entire country decides that, this deen, Islam is too backwards, it's too conservative. We need to come up with something bigger, something better, something newer. What ends up happening? I want you to look at what's happening in Palestine now. Look at what's happening. We used to say a few weeks ago, subhanAllah, we say, look at what's happening in Syria now. Look at what's happening in Syria now. In Syria now liberated, there's this sahwa, this revolution back to Islam, back to the deen, back to the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the reason we lost Palestine, by the way, the ummah only loses Palestine when it's completely lost. When no one is following the deen. Barely any people are using the deen as a metric for anything. Palestine is always the metric for the ummah. Because they are the people, the Prophet ﷺ describes them in hadith, فِي رِبَاطٍ إِلَى يَوْمِ الدِّينِ. The people that they are on haqq, they are on the people of justice till the day of judgment. Till the day of judgment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala maintains their hearts on the haqq. So if you want to see the state of the ummah and where the ummah stands right now, always look at Palestine. If we were to spawn in 1920, if Allah were to allow you to be born in the 1800s, the 1600s, look at what's happening in Palestine. As soon as you know what's going on with Palestine, Palestine is under the Ottoman Caliphate in the 1600s, and the same thing with the 1700s. And you know that the ummah is faring pretty well. We have control of Palestine. But the reason Palestine was lost in the first place, the reason 1948 was allowed to happen in the first place, the reason that all the lead up to the Zionist terrorist groups that were allowed to exist in the first place was because the Muslims left the deen. The Muslims did not care for the deen anymore. The Muslims stopped following the laws of Allah. Every time this occurs, it leads to us losing the dunya as well. فَلَا دِينٌ وَلَا dunya. So you end up losing both the deen and the dunya. And when we talk about dignity and karama, look at what happens when the ummah doesn't own its own weapons, when the ummah is not able to defend its own borders. People decide your fate in a snap. A soldier, you give them a wrong look. It, if you listen to the stories of may Allah bless them, the people that are coming out of prisons now, listen to their stories, because every single one of them is a life. Every single one of them is an individual. Wallahi, you listen to the interviews that they talk when they talk. One of the female prisoners that comes out today, she says, we came out on the blood of Ghazan children. She starts crying. She knows that the dignity of the Ghazans allowed for her to be freed. Other people, another woman just gave birth. After her daughter became 4 months old, she's released. 9 months later, she's taken away from her daughter for 9 months. She comes back, her daughter is a year old. Her daughter doesn't recognize her. She goes in, hugs her daughter, kisses her. Her daughter is looking at her. She's a child. She's not going to recognize her mother. She barely saw her. Every one of them is such a painful story. The amount of pain that you get from one story is enough to fill you with rage, that if that rage were to become a fire, it would consume the world. But we don't, because there's so much pain, you don't know where the pain is coming from. Am I pained over the people coming out of Sayadna from Syria? Or am I pained over the people jailed in Egypt? Or do I feel pain for the people jailed in Libya? Libya has the same issues that Syria had before. One dictator cut two governments, one dictator cut the country in half, and Libyans are being put in prison. Anyone talk about it? No. Sudan, the entire country is experiencing a genocide. All that pain and the suffering of the ummah, all the pain and suffering, and the fact that we need relief efforts constantly. We Muslims are donating towards relief efforts. Help the Muslims in Malaysia, help the Muslims in Syria. We're always relieving, mashallah, we're always saving the ummah. Right? Avenging the ummah, not helping it before, preserving it before something happens. The reason the Sharia talks about preservation means that I apply medicine before the disease hits the body. I'm preserving my body, so I'm already protecting it before the diseases hit and impact my body. But it seems that we're a reactionary ummah. We only react. But we don't preserve. We don't do the work beforehand to ensure that this doesn't happen in the first place. And this is the exact issue, and this is the exact problem that our ancestors fell into. Our forefathers and their forefathers, they're the ones who lost Palestine. They're the ones who lost Palestine. Think about it. 2 generations ago, your forefather, he was alive when Palestine fell into the hands of whoever it fell into the hands of the Zionists. Where was he? Where was she? And then what did you inherit as a result of this swaying away from the ummah, swaying away? You end up inheriting this broken up nation, this broken up ummah, fragmented. Every part of the ummah is in a different part of the world. Our parents came here for a better life. But the fitan we deal with on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, in order to preserve our deen here, is the same fitna that other people, perhaps the tests at home are different, but we here are just as tested. Because people have this notion that American Muslims, we live this lavish, luxurious life. We don't care about the deen. We don't care about Islam. We'll do whatever. We'll do suhoor fest. We don't care. All right? Like as if all of us are there. SubhanAllah. But that's not the case. That's not the case. There's a certain portrayal of American Muslims that's not fair. A lot of us try to be in the masajid. A lot of us try to pray qiyam. A lot of us try to be there for salat, be there in Ramadan, do our best efforts in Ramadan, be there for our brothers and sisters all over the world, help in whatever way we can. But at the same time, there's an element of us not sticking to the deen, not being dignified, knowing the karama of our deen knowing the karama of our lives isn't the karama of the deen. And last point we finish off with, the last thing that we finish off with, what happens, Tayyib, to the person that decides that, you know what, I am not going to do anything about these issues. I'm not going to do anything to preserve the ummah. I'm not going to do anything. I just want to work and go home, and that's it. Every day, work, my family, go home, that's it. I want that to be my system of life. I don't care about the karam of the deen. It's not my job. Who cares? Syria is being freed. Okay, what is that going to do for me? Palestine, what can I do for Palestine? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to help? Free Palestine. Hashtag free Palestine. Wow, bro, you freed Palestine. All those people who criticize and attack every time you try to move, take small steps. Every time you try to take small steps, subhanAllah, they're the first people to put you down. Look how Allah talks about them in Surah An-Nisa. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ تَوَفَّاهُمُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ ظَالِمِي أَنفُسِهِمْ قَالُوا فِيمَا كُنْتُمْ قَالُوا كُنَّا مُسْتَضْعَفِينَ فِي الْأَرْضِ قالوا ألم تكن أرض الله واسعة فتهاجروا فيها فأولئك مأواهم جهنم وساءت مصيرا. Long ayah, but we'll go through it together very quickly. Indeed, those whom the angels take in death while wronging themselves. So people who die, ظالمي أنفسهم, they're doing something wrong. So the angels are about to ask them, what did you do wrong? In what condition were you? قالوا كنا مستضعفين في الأرض. We were oppressed in the land. These people were oppressed. So if they're oppressed, most likely, where are they going to end up on the Day of Judgment? In Jannah, right? Is everyone with me? If you're oppressed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gets you your right on the Day of Judgment. So you end up where? Jannah, most likely. But look what happens. We were oppressed in the lands. So the angels say, was not the earth of Allah spacious enough for you to emigrate? For those, their refuge is hell. They end up in hell. Can anyone explain it to me? Why? What just happened? We always talk about oppressors and where they end up and where the oppressed end up. Oppressed end up in Jannah, oppressors in the hellfire. Allah, the Day of Judgment is Yawmul Tanad, the day where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Yawmul Furqan, the day everyone, Allah decides where everyone is going. Marwan.
Those who are oppressed in some sort of way need to actively be seeking to change their situation in order to preserve their life.
So those who are oppressed need to be seeking a change in their situation in order for them to find the life and a way. What about these people? They were oppressed. Can you explain why they ended up in hell? They were what? Bystanders. Allah is saying they were oppressed. How are they bystanders? They're the ones that they're being oppressed. So they didn't do anything to leave the oppression or to change their status, like you said. So therefore, Allah puts them in the hellfire. That's the iqab for that. Kind of. Sisters? Yes, sister. They were oppressing themselves. Okay, but when the angels asked them, what was your condition? They say, we were oppressed in the land. They tell you straight up, I was oppressed, and they're not lying. So what happened here? Anyone? Any other guesses? Yes, sister. Jazakumullah khair, sister. So, sister, you said you didn't have enough faith. Can I tell you something? This verse came about companions. That this is gonna be companions ask these questions. Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ, the angel's gonna say that to them, and it talks about they end up in the hellfire. Companions, the best ubbad, the best juhad, the best everything. Let's break that, because I know this is a little shocking. When I learned this, I was shocked as well. So this is a story in which Quraysh, when they went out to Ghazwat Badr, they took some of the Sahaba, some of the people that they knew were Muslim in Mecca. Most of the people in Mecca, there were still some Muslims, but the Quraysh either shackled them or they kept them tied down. Some people had the option to emigrate, and they didn't emigrate. And these are Sahaba. These are actual companions of the Prophet ﷺ. So the Quraysh took them to Badr. And they took them to Badr and told them, if you don't fight with us, if you don't throw arrows, if you don't do this, we're going to kill you. And so they ended up doing that, and they ended up killing Muslims. So Allah talks about, these are Sahaba. And you can derive the meaning here. We're talking about karama, dignity. What's the opposite of karama? What's the opposite of karama? Dhul. humiliation, debasement, right? There's no actual English word for the word dhul, but dhul is this absolute humiliation, absolute debasement of an individual. That's the exact opposite of karama. And so Allah is telling you that if you are not a person, وَلَقَدْ كَرَمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, if you don't make that your life motto, you live with dignity, you live on the land, not moving, you live knowing that the deen of Allah is the deen of truth, knowing that you can die any moment for this deen of Allah, and it does not bother you, like some people used to say, and one eye would not flinch if I were to be killed, right? They don't care. They not caring at all that the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the reason why you're being sacrificed. That's the highest level of karama. The highest shahada, right? But when it comes to dhul, when Allah sees that you're oppressed and that you stay there, and Allah's not saying, look at what these people say. They don't say kunna du'afa. They say kunna mustad'afin. The Arabic insinuates, here the insinuation in the Arabic language is that they had the ability to do something, but they didn't do anything about it. I questioned you a little hard and you went back on your answer. Your answer was pretty correct, right? So this is what happened. This is what happens when you don't feel that karama. This is what happens when you don't put down your foot. This is what happens when you don't take that stance, all right? This is what happens when you don't take the stance. This is what happens when you don't feel for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What ends up happening is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees the dhul, sees the mahana that you brought, sees the fact that you don't care about your brothers, sees the fact that you don't care about the rest of the ummah, that everything is happening around you. Syria is liberated, Palestine, you see what's happening with them now. You see that the fact that the people are putting them down, and you have people a few miles away in Ramallah who will still hold parties. Whether there's own Palestinians talking about Palestine. People who, for example, are in the Palestinian Authority under the rule of Mahmoud Abbas and all these individuals. What do they don't care anything about. Mahmoud Abbas stands in the United Nations and gives a speech and says, Ya alam inqidhuna, people save us, please. This is the definition of dhul, that you have to beg people for your life. Not an ummah that owns its own life, it's in its own hands. That I have the option to put down my life for my ummah or not. That I have the option to decide whether I want to leave this nation or not. That I want to stay in my home or sell it or not. Not that some Zionist decides that 3,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, my grandfather used to live here with zero evidence, comes and takes my home, and I sit there back there and I'm quiet. This idea of karama, it starts off so small. It starts off with me avoiding sin. It starts off with me staying away from what Allah has made haram and going after what Allah loves, going after the karama that Allah gave me, knowing that this is going to raise my status in this dunya and in the next. It starts off that small and it builds up and it builds up in a snowball effect. The entire ummah is entirely humiliated because they don't follow the path of Allah. They don't care for the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. They don't care about the power and the dignity that Islam gives you. Islam becomes this deen that I have to break it down and water it down so that the white man is not afraid of me. And I have to be like, Master, don't be afraid of me, please, Muhammad. Islam means peace. We come in peace all the time. We're so peaceful. I'm never going to hurt you. Not that this is a deen of karama, a deen of power as well. That if my own brother was to come invade my home, I would fight him over it. And if I were to die, I would die a shaheed. Karama, this is the dignity. This is what the deen teaches. But you're so scared all the time. ICE might come get me. Trump might come get me. Because I'm the lack of dignity in my deen. When the fact that وَلَا قَدْرَ اللَّهِ, you are put in this situation, you stand firmly on the teachings of your religion. I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm not here to cross boundaries of Allah, because guess what? My deen tells me not to follow, not to do these things, not to cross these boundaries, to not hurt thy neighbor, right? The same way the Christians preach. We have the same thing. So why is it, and we wonder all the time, why we Muslims don't have the impact that we are supposed to have in this country, in this land, overseas. We live in the wealthiest nation, in the wealthiest time, with the biggest and the most amount of access to wealth in the history of mankind. And we're not able to do anything for the people of Gaza when they're being murdered and slaughtered, besides protest. When we should be doing more, when we should be putting political pressure and political influence and political power. And we have the ability. It's not that we don't have the ability. It's that we don't realize the ability. It's that we don't use our platforms properly. It's that we don't market for ourselves properly. Instead, we get trickled down all these little things, and the Muslims are so happy with the little trickle down. When Joe Biden 8 years ago said inshallah in a speech, it raised the amount of Muslims voting for him because he said inshallah. I don't want your inshallah. You killed all these Muslims. Look what he did. Killing all these Muslims, sending tax money that we pay to kill all these Muslims. Trump gives a few imams from Michigan a platform. They got to give a speech. We all hail Trump. All hail the new master, supreme leader. And what happens in his inauguration? He's already khalas. He became the president. He removed them. They were supposed to give a speech. He removed them. He doesn't need you. He doesn't need you. That rhetoric doesn't work with him. A person who's in power only understands one language, the language of power. And not in a violent way, right? Before the Zionists clipped this, because I know they watch them on Staten Island live streams. Not in a violent way. You can be powerful and be polite. You can be impactful and strong, and you put your will down. By the way, this applies to every part of your life, with your parents, with your brothers, with your sisters, with your spouses. You can be a firm individual and respectful. You can get your way and compromise. And that's what Islam teaches. Karama. At the end of the day, that's karama. The self-realization, self-respect, a feeling of honor and personal value. احترام المرء لذاته وشعور بالشرف والقيمة. That makes a person feel affected. يجعله يتأثر ويتألم. And hurts if their worth is diminished. إذا ما انتقد قدره. That's karama. That's karama. وصدق الشاعر حينما قال وديني دين عز لست أدري أذلة قومنا من أين جاءوا أتوا بالجهل من أفكار قوم بلا دين وغرهم الثناء فلا طابت لهم فيها حياة ولا لقوا بالدين الهناء. And my religion is one of honor, of which I know not. Where did the humble people of our nation come from? Did they bring ignorance from the ideas of these people? Without religion, deceived by praise, so they found no comfort in life, nor did they find happiness in this world. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us of those who are dignified in their deen. Say Ameen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to fill us with pride in our deen, allow us to be strong in our deen, allow us to have mercy on each other, and to take stances of force when needed. Say Ameen. That is the one thing we are missing. That's the one thing we are missing. It's أشداء على الكفار رحماء بينهم. That they are strong-headed, strong, forceful on the disbelievers, merciful between each other. We flip the ayah, that we're merciful to the disbelievers, and that we're what? أشداء بيننا. We're forceful on each other in every single way, across communities, across countries. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us of those who hear advice and heed it. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك.